Without hesitation, one of the warriors drew his sword and cautiously approached the forest's edge. He stepped into the dead landscape, his boots crunching against the brittle, lifeless ground as he disappeared among the twisted trees. Moments later, a sharp, agonizing scream tore through the silence. The warrior collapsed where he stood, his body falling limp as the cursed magic of the forest consumed him. A heavy silence fell over the group. King Drakonis felt a chill settle in his chest. His instincts told him the situation had already spiraled beyond control. One of his most trusted warriors stepped forward beside him, fists clenched. "My lord, let me go," he said firmly. "I may be able to go farther than the others." Drakonis shook his head immediately, his expression hard with resolve. "No, I will not lose both of you in one day. We have already lost enough. We will find another way." But before anyone could speak again, the strange, white smoke began to move. It twisted violently in the air, then reversed direction, surging back toward the temple with unnatural speed. The mist flowed across the cursed ground and poured directly into Black Eye's motionless body. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his body jerked. The movement was unnatural, sharp and mechanical, as though some unseen force had seized control of his limbs. Slowly, Black Eye began to rise. His skin had turned grey, stretched tightly over his bones, and the life that once burned in his eyes was gone. In its place were two hollow voids, dark and empty. He stepped out of the lost temple and began walking toward King Drakonis's group. Each movement was slow, deliberate, puppet-like. In his hand he still carried the glowing crystal. Without speaking a single word, he drew a dagger from his belt. The blade glinted faintly. Then, with horrifying calm, he drove the dagger into his own abdomen. Steel tore through flesh. He dragged the blade downward with deliberate precision, opening his stomach as blood spilled onto the dead earth beneath his feet. Yet he did not cry out. He did not flinch. Instead, he calmly reached inside the wound. With slow, careful movements, he pushed the glowing crystal deep into the torn cavity of his own body, hiding it within the ruined flesh. Black Eye stood before them in silence. The wound in his abdomen slowly sealed itself as dark magic coiled around his body like living smoke. The man they had once known was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous, something that had stepped into the abyss and returned. King Drakonis and his warriors stood frozen as Black Eye began to emerge from the darkness, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. The man before them wore the body of Black Eye, but the warlock they had known was clearly gone. As the figure approached, he locked eyes with the king. King Drakonis stared in stunned horror, instinctively stepping back. His hand moved toward the hilt of his sword, but he hesitated, because the truth was now undeniable. This was no longer his warlock, it was something else entirely. "My lord," one of the warriors whispered, his voice trembling, "what has he become?" Lifeless body of Black Eye kneeled before King, and reached inside his own abdomen and got the crystal out, and handed the bloody crystal to the king. Drakonis swallowed, his face grim, though his voice remained steady. "He has done what was necessary. We have the crystal now. Whatever he has become, he did it for us." Black Eye's body suddenly collapsed to the ground, spreading blood and bones everywhere like it was barely holding. "Prepare the men," Drakonis ordered, his tone hard and decisive. "We leave at once. The temple has given us what we came for, but this place reeks of death. We must move before the darkness follows us." The warriors obeyed immediately. Horses were mounted, armor tightened, and weapons secured. Behind them, the forest seemed to stir. The twisted trees creaked softly as if bending toward them, their blackened branches shifting like skeletal hands reacting to the disturbance. Deep within the temple, however, the chained figure had awakened fully. Its glowing crimson eyes burned through the darkness as it watched them leave. Though the creature remained bound by ancient chains, its voice slipped beyond the temple walls, carried by the restless wind. "You may have escaped this place," the voice whispered, ancient and cold, "but the darkness will find you. It will consume you all." Far ahead on the road, King Drakonis rode at the front of the column. Victory should have filled him with pride, yet an uneasy weight settled in his chest as the cursed forest slowly disappeared behind them. As he raised the glowing crystal in his hand, the light within it began to swirl. His vision distorted. Within the crystal's depths, terrifying images began to form. He saw a throne drenched in blood, surrounded by the corpses of fallen kings. The air itself seemed thick with the stench of death. From the tip of a sword hung a head, swaying slowly in the wind like a grim symbol of absolute conquest. Then the vision shifted. A war unfolded inside the crystal, one between Drakonis himself and a towering figure cloaked in shadow, a being so immense it seemed larger than life. Their clash shook the battlefield as steel met darkness. But the vision did not end there. From the raging fires of hell emerged another figure, cloaked entirely in flame, wielding a power that seemed capable of burning the world itself. And finally, a rider appeared. Mounted upon the back of a colossal dragon, the armoured figure loomed over the battlefield like a harbinger of destruction, the beast's eyes glowing like embers ready to ignite the world. The crystal pulsed in Drakonis' hand, and the future it revealed was drenched in blood. The vision sent a violent shiver down Drakonis' spine. His hands trembled, his breath quickened, and his heart pounded in his chest. The images burned into his mind like a curse he could not escape. Unable to endure it any longer, he hurled the crystal to the ground. "Destroy it!" he bellowed, his voice shaking with fury and fear. "No one will ever use this again. It's cursed, pure evil." His most trusted warrior reacted instantly. Grabbing the flail from his side, he swung the weapon in a wide arc. The metal spike ball whistled through the air before crashing down onto the crystal with brutal force. The impact rang out like thunder. The glowing crystal shattered instantly, exploding into countless fragments that scattered across the dead ground like shards of broken glass. Far away, within the depths of the lost temple, something stirred. The dark figure, chained to the cold stone wall, felt the sudden surge of power ripple through the chamber. Its hollow, glowing eyes snapped open. The destruction of the crystal fed its strength. Though the heavy chains still bound its skeletal body, the darkness within it surged violently. Muscles tightened beneath its pale skin as it strained against the restraints, the iron links groaning and creaking beneath the pressure. But the chains did not break. Even with the returning power, the lingering presence of the dark sword continued to weaken it, draining its strength and keeping the ancient horror imprisoned. Back in the cursed forest, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier, suffocating. A cold wind slithered through the dead trees, whispering through their blackened branches. The ground beneath King Drakonis' feet trembled faintly, as if the land itself had awakened. "My lord," one of the warriors whispered, his voice trembling as he glanced nervously around the forest. "What? What have we done?" Drakonis stood frozen for a moment, breathing heavily as he struggled to rid his mind of the terrible visions the crystal had shown him. His eyes fell upon the shattered fragments scattered across the ground. Destroying it should have ended the nightmare. Instead, the weight of what he had done felt even more suffocating. "We did what we had to," Drakonis snapped, though an edge of uncertainty crept into his voice. "It had to be destroyed. That vision, it was a warning." "My lord, what did you see?" Hans, the king's most trusted warrior, asked as they rode through the eerie forest, concern etched across his face. Drakonis gritted his teeth. The horrifying images still twisted through his thoughts like shadows that refused to fade. He tightened his grip on the reins until his knuckles turned white. "Prepare the ships," he ordered coldly. His voice carried both iron determination and a trace of something darker. Fear. "We begin our conquest today." He stared ahead into the darkness of the forest. "Set sail for Stormend." Without hesitation, one of the warriors spurred his horse forward, galloping through the twisted trees. Within moments, he vanished into the dark horizon, as though the wind itself had carried him back toward the fleet. The rest of the men remained close behind the king, waiting for further orders, though an uneasy silence hung over them. Hans glanced at Drakonis once more, sensing the turmoil beneath the king's rigid composure. "What did you see, my lord?" he asked cautiously, guiding his horse beside him. "You have faced countless enemies and conquered entire nations. Yet I have never seen you like this." Drakonis's expression hardened. His eyes were distant, cold. "Hans," he said quietly, "I saw the destruction of the Mykar Empire. Everything we know, everything we have built, both good and terrible, reduced to ruin. All because of one man, one bastard. If what I saw truly comes to pass, it will mark the end of our world." Hans stared at him in disbelief. "The end of Mykar?" he repeated. The very thought seemed impossible. The Mykar Empire had stood for centuries, crushing kingdoms and dominating lands far beyond its borders. The idea that it could fall felt unreal. "There must be a way to stop it," Hans said firmly. "If we conquer the world, if we control everything, no one will have the power to challenge us. The Empire will become invincible, strong enough to stand against any threat." Drakonis slowly shook his head, his jaw tightening. "No," he said grimly. "It is not about strength. It is not about power." He paused, as if the next words weighed heavily upon him. This destruction will come from something else, something deeper." His voice lowered. "Love." The word sounded almost painful as it left his lips. "Love, only love, will destroy that bastard." Hans frowned, confusion spreading across his face. "Love, my lord?" he asked. "I don't understand. How could love destroy an empire?" Drakonis glanced at his warrior, his gaze hardening once more. "It was not just any man I saw sitting on that throne," he said. "He was a Darkian. That cursed bloodline has always been a thorn in our side. He will rise to power and lay waste to everything we have fought for, and it will be love, some deep bond that fuels his conquest, turning him into the force that destroys us." The king's words hung heavy in the air. Hans remained silent, absorbing the weight of the revelation. Drakonis continued, his tone colder now, sharpened by a renewed sense of purpose. "That is why we must attack Stormend. We will wipe out the Darkian dynasty once and for all. End them before they ever have the chance to rise. If we act now, we can stop this nightmare before it becomes reality." Hans nodded slowly, though uncertainty still lingered in his expression. "If we crush Stormend, will it truly be enough?" he asked. "How do we stop something as intangible as love?" The king exhaled slowly, his eyes fixed on the dark, lifeless forest stretching before them. "We cannot kill love," Drakonis replied quietly. "But we can destroy the ones who carry it, the ones who hold that power. If the Darkians die, the bond dies with them. The future I saw in the crystal will never have the chance to unfold." For a moment, silence settled over the group as they rode on, the muffled thud of hooves against the dead earth the only sound in the cursed forest. Hans studied his king from the corner of his eye. The burden upon Drakonis was clear. This was no ordinary campaign. What lay ahead was not merely another conquest. It was a desperate attempt to change the future itself. "My lord," Hans said carefully, "then we must also strengthen our defences. We cannot afford to waste men and weapons in needless battles. If this vision truly threatens everything we have built, we must focus on what is best for Mykar, not simply what wins us the next war." Drakonis nodded slowly, the machinery of strategy already turning in his mind. "You are right," he said at last. "We will attack Stormend and erase the Darkians from history, but we will do it wisely. We cannot bleed ourselves dry in reckless wars. Mykar must grow stronger with every step we take." His eyes hardened as he looked ahead into the shadows. "Because if we are to rule the world, the Empire must be unbreakable." Hans felt an unfamiliar surge of hope, even beneath the weight of the prophecy. "The Darkians won't know what's coming," he said quietly. "This time we'll be ready." Drakonis turned toward him, his gaze sharp, burning with resolve. "It will not be easy, Hans. The path ahead is paved with blood and sacrifice. But if we prevail, the Mykar Empire will rise above all others." His voice hardened. "And we will rule over the ashes of those who stood against us." Without another word, they rode on through the shadowed forest, the trees looming like silent sentinels on either side of the narrow path. The night wind whispered through the branches, carrying the distant scent of salt and storm. At last the forest thinned. Beyond the final line of trees, the ships awaited them along the darkened shore, sleek war vessels with black sails already stretching against the rising wind. Torches flickered along the docks as the Mykar fleet prepared for departure, while the kingdom of Shadow Bay burned beside them. Men moved quickly, loading supplies, securing ropes, and readying weapons. Every movement carried the quiet urgency of soldiers who knew they were marching toward destiny. Within moments, the fleet pushed away from the shore. The ships cut through the restless sea, their black sails swelling as they set course for Stormend. Far ahead, the horizon had begun to darken, heavy clouds gathering like a wall across the sky. Drakonis stood at the bow of the lead ship, the cold wind whipping through his cloak. The vision still lingered in his mind: blood-soaked fields, burning cities, the fall of empires, a future steeped in ruin. But he refused to let it come to pass. Whatever the cost, he would change it. The Darkians would fall, and the Mykar Empire would rise. Around them, the sea grew eerily quiet. The waves lapped softly against the hulls, yet an unnatural stillness settled over the water, as though the world itself had paused, waiting. In the distance, thunder rolled beneath the gathering clouds. The storm was coming, and with it a fate that would either save them or destroy them all.